am joined by Alex and Simon from Royal Mail, who are going to introduce themselves for me and for you now. Hi, Alex. How are you doing?
Yeah, hi. I'm really excited to be here and sharing the stage with you in this digital world. So I'd like to just say a couple of words. I'm Alex. I've been at Royal Mail for just over 10 years, actually. So I've seen a fair amount of transformation at the organization, and I look after our combined digital and data agenda at Royal Mail. And in addition to my day job, I'm also the non-executive director for two of our subsidiaries, Storefeeder, Intersoft. I'll probably say a few words about those as we go through today. So yeah, I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you so much. And hi, Simon. How are you doing today? If you'd love to introduce yourself.
Yeah, very good, Catherine. Thanks for the warm introductions. I'm Simon Gratton. I am the Director of Analytics, Science and Engineering at Royal Mail. So very much on the product delivery side, working with Alex, for Alex. Background in data, being a CTO and a CDO in a number of organisations. Very much behind the essence of the cloud transformation and the deployment of science, analytics and engineering across the Royal Mail.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for your time today. Now, as I said in the introduction, if you have any questions for both Alex and Simon, then do send them in. I'd love to put your questions to them both. So let's dive in. Now, Alex, I think it's fair to say that Royal Mail is pretty much, a home brand. Everyone has at least heard of Royal Mail, if not used the services. But something that people may not be as familiar with is where you are right now in terms of your transformation journey. So I'd love for you to tell me a bit about that and what some of the changes and challenges you guys have seen within the organisation.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. So, where do you start? Royal Mail clearly is, to say, a household brand and an organisation that is probably a brand that you come across every day in your life. And I think if we had this conversation 4 or 5 months ago, it would be possibly a slightly different conversation. COVID has introduced some fairly interesting additional challenges to where we are as a business. But to just at the headline level to set out what the challenges are and where we're going as an organization. Principally speaking, really the letter has been the backdrop of our organization for the past 500 years. But increasingly, we are transforming from a letters-led business into a parcels-led business. And this is fueled by the changes of e-commerce and the introduction of home shopping that we all experience, I guess. And it's a subtle change, becoming a parcels-led business. But actually, when you unpack that in terms of what does that mean, really probably the easiest way to bring it to life is to think about how you receive a mail product from Royal Mail today. Historically, we would see the customer being the letterbox in the door, and our posties would predominantly be able to drop 90% of the product through your letterbox and not having to interact with you as a consumer. Parcels world, right? You have an expectation of an item that's coming. You probably is a high value good that you want to receive, and as a result, there's a much more intimate relationship between us and the receiver. That often is like, where's my item? When will I get it? Or I'm not at home. I want it somewhere else. So it's completely reframing the relationship that we have with our customers from the door in which we drop an item to the consumer behind the door and have a much more personalized experience. Now, the bit that's really fundamentally shifting things in the industry and that you experience around maybe no longer going to the high street and buying things online has been accelerated through COVID. We've seen in the past 4 or 5 months our product mix and our revenue position with regards to letters versus parcels has leapt forward by about 3 years in terms of where we expect it to be from a business planning perspective, and that puts crazy pressure on us as a business to accelerate our transformation and get in terms of our capability built to where we need to be. And I think that's fundamentally fueled by data and how we use and consume data to help understand our customers better, understand what our products are, which is one of the key reasons why Simon has joined us on this exciting journey to transform the business.
Fantastic. I mean, that leads nicely on to my next question for you, Simon, having that idea around the transformation and obviously the wider impacts in terms of, like you say there, with e-commerce and us all busy ordering lots of packages online. I know I'm certainly guilty of it. So Simon, where are you on your data journey within Royal Mail, and how mature would you say your data capabilities really are, and what does that look like today in comparison to where you've been?
Well, I think first, before we describe the journey, what we probably should think about is the competition, and we should think about the market in which we now operate. So obviously there are numerous examples of the Internet of Things, of cloud and connected data scenarios. If we look at companies like Amazon, and certainly outside of the logistics field, I've seen examples of this at Centrica, JCB and Schneider Electric as well. The competitors are progressing with smart logistics pipelines, pervasively deploying mobile and IoT connectivity to capture more information, obviously to personalize the services that they offer, and are using increasingly intelligent supply chains that use ecosystem-wide data, so they capture every piece of information that they can. And of course, this is over a period where most companies, old and new, are in transition to the cloud in terms of ways of working, and that obviously invokes a number of changes across the business and across the technology functions that support it. So in terms of history, where are we? We used to be a classic BI shop, just like everybody really. And as a result of that, trying to focus on many, many different aspects of the business simultaneously and get close to those business areas, we were somewhat fragmented. We had distributed teams, and we had a number of technology stacks, as I'm sure you could imagine. And over the preceding period, over the last 10 years, we've created a centralized data team, and we've started to transform our data processes, putting data at the forefront rather than the differences across our business at the forefront of our thinking. And then we transitioned to a shared service model, with all of the reporting teams reporting into a single function. And then subsequently, with the functional aspects changed, we looked at the build out of a central data warehouse for the first time at the Royal Mail, in essence, on this scale. And basically the reporting stacks and the databases were centralized at that point to basically place all of the Royal Mail's data assets in a single location. That today, that architecture is around the 300 terabyte size. We've got hundreds of dashboards, hundreds of reports, and we capture billions of events and have 33 what we would call complex data products across the estate. And I think in terms of that's sort of where we are and where we've been. In terms of our next evolution, our focus, I've mentioned the cloud transition and driving more value from the creation of our data into the digital side of the equation, into the business areas that Alex has already alluded to. We're a multi-cloud operation, so it's leveraging services from GCP and from Azure. And we have maturing data science and data engineering functions to support this transformation. We're learning as we go along, but we're learning very rapidly and already deploying value using those capabilities. Innovation has been challenging. Taking an idea, looking at the commercial viability and delivering it at scale has been challenging. But it's a model that we're constantly evolving. An example of which might be something like our extended delivery window product, EDW as we call it, which based on the information at its disposal will give you a fixed delivery slot. And this is based on a data science algorithm that takes historical tracked delivery modeling information and GPS information and attempts to find the most optimal delivery window for the customer. And I think that probably brings us to the current day. And Alex, I guess that's pretty much when you took over.
Yeah, I think that leads us nicely into so next question. So I do want to talk a little bit about the changes, and I guess if you look me up on LinkedIn, you might realize I'm a little of a fish out of water when it comes to data. So what's to have in the past? What like Reuters, we're data businesses. My heritage is being a digital leader of the organization. So I think it's some interesting challenges for us when we started looking at what's the combined journey between digital and data. So yes, I'm happy to dive into that, Catherine, if you want to.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I know it's something that when I was doing a bit of research ahead of this session, it was definitely an area that I wanted to pick your brains on, that synergy between data and digital. So I suppose I'll take my opportunity now to pick your brains on it and say, and ask rather, why did you set out that mission, and how does it link to the broader ideas of what the business wants to be doing?
Yeah, cool. So, it's a fascinating journey, and I think if I reflect back on the last 12 months of working that through, firstly, I suppose on my own, and increasingly with Simon joining me, as part of this effort. So, when I first had the opportunity, it was driven tactically. I took responsibility for the Chief Data Officer role on an interim basis, and started to look into how do we reposition the value creation of data in the wider organizational context and drive it directly into our transformation agenda. And I was unsure as to whether we would ultimately split it back out into two things, or whether we'd keep digital and data together. And we have come to the answer to that question, which partially brings us here today, which is that we see more synergies between the digital and the data agenda than we see between the differences and the differences of the two. And it's been quite fascinating to see some of the things that I naturally bring to the dialogue are the things that have been missing in the data team. So I think the data team has done an amazing job in bringing data capability together, looking at the foundational capabilities and bringing them to bear, as Simon has just described. But where often they got stuck is when it came to scaling data products for enterprise use and combining them with other data assets in the organization. And then when we started to dig into it as a team, we saw that actually, sort of almost side by side, that the data teams and the digital teams have been on a similar journey towards agile adoption, looking for data ops capabilities to accelerate the pace of change. They started to build an engineering culture around data engineering and data science capabilities. But ultimately, we're looking for value creation within the business as the bit that drives sustained investment and return on investment. So what we found that the things that we're asking about in terms of, well, how do we scale this product? How do we get better cloud adoption? How do we connect ourselves up into digital channels like our web channel or mobile estate? Were questions I could naturally answer and bring some leadership to the organization. And then when we got stuck into the wider transformation agenda internally within Royal Mail in terms of where we want to be, and Simon talked about us competing with digital native, but actually the culture, the IT culture and the digital culture that we needed end-to-end in the organization is unlocked by what we call the productization technology. So here's where we bring together the concepts of value creation within what we call the product stream, and combining our teams together, whether they're digital or data, to really reimagine how to unlock a customer community, a business user community, or system processes like APIs and others to make them create more value than they have in the past. And here is the product thinking that really I was looking for in my core data leader, and as a result, I'm was really excited to bring Simon on board to that product thinking from a data perspective for the team.
Fantastic. Now, you may have seen my eyes move across the screen because we've just had an influx of questions come in. So, Simon, I'll put this to you first. How do you approach innovation? Is it driven by pilot projects or proof of concept?
We use both vehicles. So we have quite an advanced scoring model for incoming innovations, which actually involves some data science, believe it or not, as well. So we look at the potential pilots or proof of concept. We decide whether it's tactical or strategic. We decide what the benefits are and the complexity of the solution, and we then decide the approach to take like the data science team, for example, uses the lean startup approach as per the book. So MV, minimal viable products. We iterate very, very quickly. So that can be done each day, whether we're building an algorithm, an API, or a visualization. So we deploy both. It will depend on the scale or the potential benefit of the example that's being requested by the business area.
Fantastic. Now, it's clear that the producer, James, who designed this agenda and obviously worked with you both to create this session, was completely on the money, because would you believe it or not, we've just had an audience question come in that literally matches my next question, which is, you know, you've explained really well the why, but the how behind bringing these two areas in is yet to be explored. So I'll put it to both of you, because the question was actually to Alex. However, on my notes, I was going to go to Simon first. So clearly, both perspectives are really wanted. So Alex, if you'd like to jump in first on that one, and then I'll go to Simon.
Sure, no, happy to do so. So I think that the how question is the critical question. I think there are some practical things around bringing digital data together in terms of combined agile delivery teams to bring that thinking into one church is really important. So I think invariably when you look at well, actually, if you put yourself in the customer's shoes, the customer doesn't really worry about what is functional enablement and what is data insight and data enablement, right? So they would never draw this differentiation with regards to the capabilities. And of course, we as practitioners and as specialists and people who are really good in our discipline so often forget about this combined viewpoint from our customer's perspective. So, but I think Simon's got some interesting thoughts and ideas around getting ourselves into this product-driven composite application development space. So I really would like him to kind of take perspective on that.
Sure. So I think it ties back to what Alex how Alex started, which was that product thinking is really the catalyst for bringing all this together. So digital and data are the yin and yang, as we've seen, two sides of the same coin. Data enables the digital experience. Digital drives the requirements that the data needs to provide across the front lines and across the back office. So the way we bring it together, the way increasingly we're learning to and developing to bring this together, is to think of digital outcomes, as supported by data products, connecting the two. So this drives us towards, as Alex mentioned, composite applications, and these composite applications use a variety of capabilities, both digital and data, I hasten to add, to deliver an outcome. So the EDW example we gave earlier was a combination of frontline applications in terms of our PDAs, APIs and services on the Azure cloud, and algorithms and data assets hosted in GCP orchestrated together to deliver that delivery window, and also to provide continuous learning through that process to improve that delivery window, if you like. So composite applications that combine data science, analytics, and to a certain extent software engineering is how we build towards a digital outcome. And what this does is this takes us from the data era of being retrospective in the back office towards proactive frontline intelligence with the business areas on our front lines, with our frontline staff, with our postmen and postwomen, and of course in all the assets that we move through the supply chain. So one example fairly recently is CRT, which was a complaints application. Again, using all of the cloud data and other services that I've mentioned already, and what that does is it streamlines complaints resolution between the call center and our delivery offices. And you can imagine the Royal Mail is a massive company, a massive supply chain, lots of delivery offices, so a lot of coordination to do that. And that is a composite application using software engineering, data science, and analytics capabilities to deliver that solution. So it's all about delivering to the digital outcome, bringing blended teams together, blending the technologies rather than working in silos. We're very agile in nature as well, so we work in very fast, short, sharp iterations, following something akin to the safe agile approach. And the teams have a shared outcome, which is absolutely critical in delivering that digital experience that we all aspire to. And it gives us the speed, because we're very clear on outcome, because we're working as a shared team, because we're building applications using this composite approach. We get value to the customers faster, and we drive up our business agility in the process. So that's probably the way we do it today.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Alex, brilliant to see you there. I saw you disappear for a moment, but you're back now.
Yeah. My apologies. My browser just crashed on me. I thought me just disappearing there briefly. How do you do those?
No worries. It's just a great indicator that we are in fact live. So looking ahead, we've had a fantastic discussion about where we are, where we've been, but the future, I mean, it's uncertain. I'm certainly not going to ask you to go and grab a crystal ball and tell me what you see in the future. But in terms of your aspirations as to where you want your journey to go, how would you answer that one?
Yeah. Let me start off on this one. So as we so we talked a little bit about the Royal Mail of the future is an organisation that has got much more intimacy with its customers, is much more in terms of the supply chain. What you used to today, reliably the postie, walking up and down the street, and that will bring product to you. But increasingly, the products are larger. We're just trialing returns processes, so allowing you not only to receive an item, but also hand an item over at the point of the postie visiting you. But increasingly, we are online shoppers who buy shoes and clothes, and the items are getting larger and larger. Right, they won't fit into the mailbag of the postie in the future. So increasingly, what we need to do is deploy our van-based assets in order to get product to customers, and that introduces much more dynamism in the way we deliver product, and consequently the way we schedule product and the way we move through our supply chain. So then there's that dynamic element in our more parcels led business that's driving new digital problem sets into us as an organization. That requires more optimization, more resource optimization. We always have to do more with less, which kind of goes without saying. And as a result, injecting the intelligence and some of the machine learning and analytics capabilities that Simon spoke about into our core digital products and supply chain management capabilities, all the way to the final mile and mobile devices as used by the posties, it is where the data journey will take us forward as a business. So I think probably the kind of one of the key areas at the moment, when we just look at that final mile and how we not only direct the van through traffic, through different workloads, seasonal, non-seasonal, Christmas, where suddenly our volume goes up by millions and millions of items, and we tend to hire up to 30,000 temporary workers to just help us deliver all product during that period, means that we need to become much more flexible. And so Simon, I mean, I don't know your thoughts on creating that dynamism in our network. What are you thinking?
Well, it's really a continuation of what we've been doing for the last few years, which is just using the data that we have at our disposal. Obviously, it's in the news. It's well publicised that we're deploying new parcel hubs, which have a significant amount of automation and are able to deal with much higher volumes. And with that comes even further opportunities to harness nation that those hubs provide as well, and make us enable a smoother transition between the indoors and outdoors processes, which is what drives an efficient supply chain. So I think, as Alex has said, bringing data science algorithms, machine learning nearer to the frontline applications, so that we're constantly providing intelligence where it's most needed, so our staff can do their jobs effectively. And I think it's just about being able to be more flexible and more reactive in the market as we implement these supply chain hubs.
Yeah, and I think that actually just reminds me. So one really good example to bring it to life a little bit. So the government is pumping a lot of money into roadworks, and roadworks are just the bane of our lives as a business. For us, we clear down our mail centres late in the evening, and then often truck product from throughout the entire country overnight, and of course roadworks which often happen during the night are unhelpful. So And these roadworks bring up, often with very short notice. So we often will see that the government will advertise roadworks, first thing in the morning, and we then having to react to within a very short order. So one of the products we've released into our logistics colleagues is that we're using our telematics data from our trucks. To help direct the trucks, and I think that was one of the award-winning use cases that we put out recently. I think that the Heads product that really helped us in solving that problem. I don't know, Simon, can you remember a little bit more about that one?
Well, Heads, yes, is as Alex said, a rerouting of the trucks when traffic events occur around in the supply chain, and it uses a scoring system, and it learns. It's to a certain extent a learning algorithm that learns the most successful route driven by the Royal Mail colleagues over the past 12 months. So, in a scenario where you need to reroute to deliver on time, it picks the best route based on the combined experience of our Royal Mail colleagues that have operated that day, each day, day in, day out. So it basically is a learning system that drives that efficiency.
Yeah, and it's you might say, well, why don't you just use Google Maps? But of course, Google Maps is not optimized for today for the Arctics, for the and you end up having lorries driving into railway bridges, which I think cost you something like I think £12,000 a second if you bring a railway bridge to a stop. So a very expensive mistake to make. And another interesting scenario that we're constantly dealing with is around fraud prevention. So we do we sometimes jokingly say that Royal Mail is, well, they're such a big business, so it doesn't matter if you send an item for free, it won't make a difference, won't it? But of course, it does. We estimate fraudulent stamping and franking in the 50 to 70 million pound window per annum. So it's a lot of money that kind of leaks out of our business. And you'd be surprised to see how many fake stamps are being sold online. And this is not a call to action for everybody listening to kind of go, oh, I can buy stamps more cheaply online. No, you can't. So stamps, first and second class stamps, are regulated products. There's one price, and you can't get it anywhere cheaper, irrespective of which channel. So if you find the stamp online cheaper, then you get them on the high street or online from us directly, then it is a fake stamp, and it will be rejected by the network. But again, we've employed some interesting technology to help combat frauds. So Simon, did you want to say a little bit about that one?
Yeah, sure. So that's so one example would be the eBay scraper, which is a bot, as we all know them, a robot, a piece of bot code. And what that does is that scans the listings on eBay looking for stamps and items such as that, based on the quantities being sold, looking to see if that's under the regulated amount for the product, which implies that it's fraudulent. And that then notifies the relevant teams in the Royal Mail to explore that supplier or that listing. So selling fake stamps online is a classic example of that through bot technology.
Yeah, exactly. And then probably the last bit to maybe say, sorry, Catherine, just one last thing. If we still got a little bit of time, there's one more item I thought was probably worth talking about a little bit. So I did mention early on that for us, kind of, I suppose, our customers shifting from that letterbox in the door to the person behind the door, and it's quite a fundamental shift for as a business how we think about our products and our customers and the services we deliver. So this journey from the letterbox to the person behind the door is quite important. And of course, when you come from a business that historically has not had to kind of deal with actually the end consumer, but only with an address as the customer, that is a massive step change. I think us as data professionals will understand how you go from, 28 million households to 60 million receivers in the UK. That's an order of magnitude in terms of addressable target audience, but also then the dynamics of who's at an address, who's a valid receiver, what is the identity of the receiver, increasingly regulation around alcohol, for example, being shipped online, making sure that the person behind the door is over 18. So identity verification is starting to become part of the problem space. So it's a whole host of new things, and we know it's starting to look beyond the address and to the person. And of course, for us, person data is all over the place, because historically it wasn't one thing to look at. So the data management challenge around moving from address to person are massive. And again, I think Simon probably worthwhile to bring that to life a little bit.
Well, this is matching and your master data management on steroids, I suppose, in a nutshell, for the data techies out there. As Alex mentioned, knowing who's in the household, and if you think of every supply chain transaction within the Royal Mail supply chain, we identify, to a certain extent, or we're able to identify the householders in the supply chain, and to support the verification of their, potentially to support the verification of their identification. Is it being posted to the right address? Is that person at that address, and have they been at that address for a certain period of time? Does it seem reasonable that a high value item is now going to a different address, for example? And I think in line with the banks, financial services, and the government digital services, for example, identification and verification is obviously a massive capability which we truly believe the Royal Mail can contribute to.
Fantastic. So we've had a couple audience questions come in, and we do still have some time left, so I'm keen to jump into those. So this one's quite a long one, so you have to bear with me. When companies try to move to a culture of data democratization and data literacy, they focus on technology. Cultural change is swept over, and the technology fails because associates refuse to move away from gut feel, or siloed fiefdoms are threatened because their bad behavior would be exposed. Have you faced this issue? If so, how do you mitigate for it?
Yeah, let me start with that one, actually. So I totally recognize the question. I think it's a pertinent question when I look at the data journey we've been on over the past 10 years. So and I totally recognize it. So when we look back at some of our operational data that we've been historically often driving at a local level, often kind of process optimization was happening within the control of an individual delivery office or a mail center, right? And so often the local management there were in control in both the data creation, the performance management, and how they were incentivized in terms of their reward and recognition as entities within the business. And when we started to shift away from that sort of local created data and local ownership into aggregated data and the central data warehouse that Simon talked about, we did actually start to see disparity between the performance data that was submitted and shared through, I suppose, maybe the more management-driven dialogue versus what we saw in the source data and the core data. That then introduces two questions. Question number one: so why is there a difference? And number two, should there be a difference? And that sometimes the answer is no, there shouldn't be a difference. It should be the same, and there's just some data quality issues that need to be resolved. And sometimes there are differences because true performance is different to actual to reported performance, and those are the ones where then becomes an issue with regards to how do you manage that change, why is it happening, is the incentivization, right? So in our scenario where or in our case, where as a business we started to move into central performance management of a single database, I think you got to allow time for that to happen, because you do not want to get into a conflict dialogue right at the beginning of that journey, where data differences just need to be accepted and then be managed forward, as opposed to too much. Okay, so really, why is this happening? I think you got to give people the opportunity to be to have made honest mistakes, as well as on both sides. It could be in the IT function or the business function. So my advice would be that wherever those situations do arise, I think you need to have an ambition of a factual, clear, objective, and verifiable data chain. Data lineage and data ownership, but give some time for the organization to learn how to live with that clarity and disambiguity that often exists in more casual use of data, shall I say. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, Simon, but the question resonates a lot with me.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine to go on to the next question, Catherine. I think Alex has covered everything I've covered there.
Fantastic. So the next one says, in such a big organization, how do you prioritize your work to improve the condition of your data assets?
Crikey, this is a tough audience, isn't it? So I'll have a go at that one. We've had culture and now we've had prioritization, the two words that every CDO out there or every digital professional hates, I suppose. The prioritization of the assets is difficult because certainly at a group level it's difficult because who are we as data professionals or technology professionals to stipulate which business area has greater priority over another. But I would say the way that we tend to look at it is through three lenses. One is how much of what's being asked for in terms of extending a data asset do we already have? So can we do we have a degree of reuse, which means that what's being requested is really just an extension of an existing asset. So that's quite challenging because you have to understand the estate, the lineage that Alex talked about. And also you have to understand a little bit about how data starts to look more like a product rather than a project delivery with that model, which is a very big difference. I think in terms of the prioritization, I talked earlier about the scoring model that we have, which looks at financial parameters, benefits, complexity. It looks at the business value, we have project charters just like everybody else that look at the ROI of a particular change being delivered. I think that so we're no different in that respect. The challenge is balancing the two. So where you have a project that has a huge potential benefit in some form, but it potentially compromises the data estate, or potentially where you want to build a better data asset, but it doesn't have any immediate business value in that first project vehicle that goes through. That's where you have a significant challenge. And I think the way that we address that is that we try to enhance the data assets with every product that we deliver. So rather than justifying cleaning up your data assets and protecting them as a separate initiative, we literally try to do that product by product and nip and tuck them as we go along.
Fantastic. Alex, did you want to add in anything to that one?
Yeah, I think for me, I totally agree that the critical thing here is the product thinking, is the value creation, and investment will always flow to where the value is being created. And I think what we as digital data professionals need to do is say to our business colleagues, there's always technical debt, and you've got to eat technical debt with building the new. So whenever you invest, please put 10% aside for us to remediate some technical debt. And typically that's a value exchange our business colleagues are happy to go with. I think they find it easier to say, well, we'll only take 90% of the value you're creating, and the 10% we'll give back to you, rather than 100%, as opposed to assignments that's trying to make a net new case that says, well, we won't give you any value, but believe us, when you spend all the money with us, it'll be beautiful in the future. Invariably, business colleagues don't quite like that story.
Wonderful. I think we've got chance for one final question, looking at the clock. Now this jumps back a bit to the user case you were using about the trucks. And this question says, the telematics in trucks for rerouting, how did you go about implementing this system?
Okay, so I think sorry, Simon, do you want to do this one, or shall I start off and we'll see how we get?
You can start, Alex. I'll follow. That's fine. Yep. If there's any extra.
Okay, fine. Yeah, no. So we clearly haven't rehearsed that question. So principally speaking, for us, we consume huge amounts of telematics data, so as well as device data from the PDAs from the front line. So we kind of know where most of our assets are in every given point of time per day, and consequently we are able to feed that data into machine learning algorithms and basically look at a data flow. So the specifics here are around injecting the geographic data in terms of where lorry drivers were over the last 6 months period. So they basically have recorded all routes, and it's about going from A to B. So if a lorry driver from, say, a mail center in the Midlands needs to go up to the north, these are static routes and they are known. And then what we then do is we collect up basically all the routing data that we have seen a lorry going from A to B over the past 6 months. And that will give you basically a distribution. And no, 99.9% of the times they're going up the motorway, but in other cases they're not. And you would then have a historical view on the time it took a lorry to drive from A to B when they were not using the preferred route. So the moment we get a notification from Highways Agency that says the M1 is closed, we can then look into our data and look at the routes that our professional drivers have taken in the past in order to make some recommendations into which ones might be the most viable route. So that's the kind of the business problem, how we solve the business problem and how we attacked it. So I don't know, Sam, whether you want to bring some of a bit more of the sort of technical side around that to life. In terms of how we score that?
Well, we do a variety of things, but I think probably the message, rather than going into how we score, because that'd be giving the game away a little bit, wouldn't it? But I think we've used the telematics data for years, as you would imagine. We're a logistics supply chain, of course we have. Could we do more with it? Yes, we could. So outside Royal Mail, using the same providers that we use at Royal Mail today. There's also options for us to look at it from a maintenance perspective, and potentially is there an issue with the truck, with the right agreements with the suppliers, so we can go beyond, as Alex said, scoring routes and getting our route efficiency better through GPS data. We can go into potentially in the future predicting issues with the vehicles themselves. Is there a potential issue, or is there a potential need to service something? So really the opportunities are enormous, but it comes down to what our business is asking for at the moment and what they need, rather than us necessarily exploring every possible use of this data. But I think so the parcel hubs, for example, obviously will detect vehicles coming in. They'll see them coming in through the GPS data, and they'll see them arrive at the perimeter and come through, so that we can trigger events into our supply chain. This is all really the use of combination of telematics data, obviously movement data as well. So it's that transition, I think, out into the supply chain, into our centres and out again, and so that we can anticipate what's coming and be ready for it when it arrives, and obviously keep everything moving. That's where the huge potential of telematics data comes in.
Fantastic. I can't believe it, but just like that, we are pretty much on the dot of our finishing time. Thank you to the audience for submitting those fantastic questions, tricky as they have been at times, and thank you both for joining us. Your answers have been absolutely insightful, and I've really enjoyed chatting with you both today.